So as I was saying, for today's session, first we're going to talk about conditional admittance and meeting the language condition for admission. So there's three ways that that can be done: through exams, the Dalhousie English test, or the Dalhousie English for Academic Purposes program, the EAP program. Then we'll talk about post-admission issues and things you may want to keep in mind around language and its connection to academic success. As I was saying at the end, we will have time for questions, so feel free to put your questions into the chat window at the bottom of the screen. As I was saying, my name's Jennifer McDonald, and I'm with the English language programs here at Dalhousie. Okay, so let's start by talking about conditional admittance. So some of you, I guess everyone who is registered for this webinar by now, you have received some type of acceptance letter from Dalhousie. You may have gained full acceptance or full admittance, meaning you're unconditionally accepted into your graduate program. Some of you may have received conditional admittance. So what this means is you're accepted into your program except for one condition, which may be language, English language. So in these cases, you usually have a length of time, and this is all in your acceptance letter. Usually it's 1 year to present proof of English language proficiency. So this means you're accepted into your program, but you have to show that you have met the language requirements within the next year. So there are three ways to do this, as I was saying. An international standardized exam score that's less than 2 years old, a Dalhousie English test score, or the diploma from the Dalhousie English for Academic Purposes program. Just a couple notes that I'll say about conditional admittance is that if you have received this admittance condition and you are doing an English program or pursuing English language proficiency proof in another manner via an exam, please remember to let Dalhousie know that you're pursuing these different options. Okay, so let's talk about meeting the language condition. First, via standardized exams. As you know, so Dalhousie accepts a variety of standardized exams. It's very important to verify the requirements in terms of exam scores of the program that you are applying to. So Dalhousie's, the majority of Dalhousie's graduate programs require, in terms of the international exams, an IELTS of 7.0 overall, or a TOEFL IBT of 92, but there are exceptions. Certain programs require a higher exam score, and it's very important that you know the exam score that's required for the program you have gained conditional acceptance to. So in terms of the exams that Dalhousie accepts, Dal accepts the IELTS, academic, TOEFL IBT, the Dalhousie English test, which I'll talk about in a moment, the CALE exam, which is a Canadian academic English language exam, as well as the Cambridge C1 Advanced, the Pearson Academic, and a few others. And all of these exams are listed on the Dalhousie admissions webpage, and in terms of the scores that are required. It's also, as I was saying, it's important to check which overall score is accepted. So most programs require an IELTS of 7.0 overall, or TOEFL IBT of 92, but some require a higher score. If you're planning on meeting the language condition via a standardized exam, you are recommended to plan your exam preparation very well. So to know which exams are offered in your city and how often. If there is a minimum length of time that you have to wait between test sittings. So if you want to take the exam, if you take the exam and don't get a high enough score, how long do you have to wait before you can take it again? And also to know, in terms of preparing your ability to take the exam, to know what's your current score, on the exam, what's your target score, so what score do you need, and what do I need to get there. So very often getting a high score on a standardized language exam is not just about your level of language and your vocabulary, your fluency, your speaking ability, but it's also knowledge of exams, of the exam, the format, how many sections, how much time you have. Do you do the speaking section via a microphone or an interview? How does it work? So knowing about the exam and having some test-taking strategies according to that exam. So these can be really important things to take into consideration. And if you are planning to do a standardized language exam, a preparation course is very highly recommended. So in your city, to work with someone, either an organization or an individual who is very familiar with the exams and can help train you on the exam. I've put some information here about the most popular standardized language tests for Canada. So we have the IELTS Academic, the CALE, TOEFL, IBT, as well as the Pearson Academic. I'm not going to go over the details of the exams because we could spend several hours going over those, but it's important to choose an exam not only that's available where you are, but you may want to consider some of the other exams. Perhaps, for example, if you are in Canada already, the CALE exam might be an option for you. It aligns with a lot of the content and the tasks that are taught in academic English courses in Canada. So that might be an option for you to consider if you're already in Canada. The Pearson exam is relatively new. It's newer than the IELTS or the TOEFL exam, which have been around for quite some time. And it's a lot of the formats and testing tasks are quite different on the Pearson than the other exams. So if you have taken the IELTS or the TOEFL several times and you have kind of hit a wall, maybe you've reached a plateau and you're finding it hard to progress, you might want to consider making a change and trying one of the other exams. Okay, I'm going to tell you now about the Dalhousie English test. So this is another exam-based or test-based way to satisfy the English requirement for admission to Dalhousie. So this is a test that is administered at Dalhousie by my department, so the English as a Second Language, or ESL Programs, in the College of Continuing Education at Dal. It's taken on-site here in Halifax at the university. So you do have to be here in order to take this exam. It has a cost of $100 for the exam, which is cheaper than the international standardized exams, but it is only accepted here at Dalhousie. So it's accepted for admissions purposes by the Faculty of Graduate Studies here at Dal only. So, this is unlike something like the official IELTS or the official TOEFL. This can only be used here at Dal. It has a similar format and scoring to the TOEFL IBT. So it is an internet-based and computer-based test. And taking the Dalhousie English test is advisable if you answer yes to one of the following questions. So either if you have an IELTS or TOEFL test score that's very close to the result required for admission into Dalhousie. So let's say you need a 92 on the TOEFL. Let's say you got a 90 the last time you did the TOEFL. You did that recently, and you have been preparing and studying and working on your TOEFL skills since you last did it. And so you think you've improved and you think that you can obtain the equivalent of a 92. Or another situation is if you are already here in Halifax, you don't have an IELTS or TOEFL or other test result, but you think that your English is at the level required by your graduate program here at Dalhousie. So it's a way to do and to get these test results if you're already here at Dal. This test is administered by appointment only. So I've put an email address here, esl@dal.ca. Please be in touch if you want to do this test, and we will liaise with you, also with the Faculty of Graduate Studies and your department if necessary, to make sure that you're a good candidate for the Dalhousie English test. Okay, so if you do not want to fulfill the admission requirement to Dalhousie via an exam or a test, there's also the option to do it via a course. And this course is called the English for Academic Purposes, EAP program. So this is an English language and academic skills course that fulfills the requirement for admission into undergraduate and graduate programs at Dalhousie. And this one, this does fulfill these requirements at Dal. So I'm going to tell you a bit about this course, but it's worth understanding from the beginning that doing this, if you do an EAP course, you do not have to do the IELTS or the TOEFL exam. Passing this course and getting the diploma from this course allows you to bypass an IELTS or TOEFL requirement. Now, in some cases, if you are coming to Dalhousie with a scholarship or a loan, you may be able to arrange for some funding to be able to pay for an English for Academic Purposes program. It is an extra cost. It's not included in the tuition fees. Some students in the past are able to negotiate funding for these courses, or sometimes with a supervisor. But once again, that is really on a case-by-case basis, and so you're advised to check with your funder to see if they will pay for a course. Otherwise, it would come out of pocket. That being said, if you do have the time and resources, so financial resources, to do an EAP course at Dalhousie before you start your graduate program, it's a very good investment in your academic success. And I'll tell you why in a moment. There's lots of research that shows that meeting the language requirement for admission via a course, an EAP course at the university, people who do this rather than come into the university via an exam, they tend to be more successful in their program, in their degree program, be it a bachelor's degree, a master's, or a PhD. And why this is so has to do with the content of an EAP program. So, and that's because it's more specialized. Now, when you prepare for an IELTS exam or a TOEFL exam, you're preparing, of course, you have to have a good English level, but what you're preparing for is how to get a good mark on the exam. However, on the other hand, with an EAP program, you are preparing, the content of the course is more in line with the real life language and academic skills that you'll need to be a graduate student at a university in Canada. So for example, it's not just general English language skills, like, how to order pizza at a restaurant, or how to write an email to your boss at work. But this is academic English. So the texts you read, the type of writing you'll do, the listening, the speaking, is all around academic English. So that texts are this high-level, complex academic texts. The writing is the type of writing that you'll be doing at the university. Listening will be academic lectures, discussions, tutorials, etc. speaking and vocabulary as well are the types of speaking that you'll do in the academic environment as a graduate student. In an EAP program, you'll also work on academic skills. So this is something that's not covered on an exam. So this is around things like research, how to carry out research, how to find research using the library system, writing from sources. So how do you incorporate previous research and writing into your thesis or different academic or journal articles or papers. Also, there's the expectations of a Canadian classroom. So if your previous university experience has been in a very, very different university environment in another country, in an EAP course, you get the chance to become familiar with the Canadian classroom, because in different places, there's different relationships between the students and professors or teachers, the types of tasks, the types of exams, they can all be very different. So in an EAP course, you will gain these academic skills as well. You'll also, from the moment you come to the university, you are a Dal student, so you get access to university facilities, libraries, etc., the other facilities around Dalhousie. And you'll also start to work on the specialist language of your discipline. So what I mean by that is the English of, for example, engineering, of chemical engineering, or the English associated with marine biology, or sociology. So when you are working at a very high level, which you will be as a master's or PhD student, you have to know not just general English, but the vocabulary, the types of writing tasks, the types of functions associated with your discipline of study. And you'll need these to be able to write articles, to be able to write your thesis, to be able to follow along in lectures in class, maybe to work as a teaching assistant or a lecturer, and also to participate in academic conferences. You have to have this very specialized language. And so that's another thing that can come from the Dalhousie EAP program that you don't necessarily get in an exam setting. So that being said, now, regardless of whether you have a language condition on admission and will be entering the university via an exam or a course, or perhaps you have gained unconditional full admission to Dalhousie, I encourage you to think beyond that first day, beyond admission, and to consider the linguistic demands of being a grad student. So I was just mentioning with regards to the EAP program, the fact that being a graduate student, doing a master's or PhD in another language that may not be your first language, it's very complex and it's very linguistically demanding. So as I was saying, you're going to be attending lectures, reading very large amounts of complex texts, books, articles. You're going to be writing a thesis. You're going to be collaborating with colleagues, perhaps in a lab setting or a group work setting, carrying out research together, presenting at conferences. You may work as a teaching assistant or a lecturer. So all of this involves being able to use language and the English language at a very, very high level, at a very advanced level. So you will have already, in order to gain admission, you've already achieved a very advanced level, but it doesn't stop at admission. I encourage everyone to think about how you're going to develop your disciplinary language, so the language associated with your discipline and your area of study and research. So the vocabulary, the writing style, the text types, the types of articles, and even things like how data is presented, how what's considered evidence or proof, how knowledge is constructed. So these are all things that vary from discipline to discipline, and sometimes can vary from country to country. So I encourage you to start to be aware and to think about this, so that you can have more successful conference presentations, have fewer revisions on your thesis chapters as you work with your supervisors, and as you start to enter into the research world of your discipline. The other thing is to learn the expectations of a Canadian university. Depending on where you've done your previous education, it may be very similar to what you're used to, or in some respects, it may be very different at a Canadian university. So for example, in certain disciplines here at Dalhousie, you may have coursework as part of your program that may involve, they may be seminar style. So that means it's a very small group and it's very discussion based. So there's a very high level of interaction. So that may be something new for you, or it may not be, but to be aware of, there could be new expectations in the classrooms and the classes that you'll be doing here. And a lot of them may require you to use the English language in a new way. The other thing to think about too is academic integrity. So this is a big deal at Dalhousie and at all Canadian universities. So this is the principles of academic honesty, of attributing and citing the sources you use, that you talk about and that you draw on in your research. And there are certain expectations and procedures around academic integrity that are very, very important to be familiar with. There's lots of resources here at the university about academic integrity. Your supervisors and your departments will be a good source as well, but it is something to be aware of in order to be a successful graduate student. So these are a lot of things to think about, but what can you do about them? There's some resources here at Dal that can help you with your language, and I've called it academic literacy development. So what I mean by academic literacy development is all these things I just said. Canadian expectations in a Canadian university classroom, academic integrity, etc. So who can help you with these once you're here at Dal? So the first one is my unit or my department, the Dalhousie University ESL Programs, so English as a second language. Regardless of whether you identify, if you identify as English as your first, as your second language, perhaps you've done a lot of your education in English. That's just a name, but what's important is we can help you with the advanced academic English and academic literacy skills. So during the fall and winter terms, we have a series of free drop-in workshops. There's 20 per term, and they can, we work on a variety of topics regarding written and oral communication, everything from advanced grammar to interviewing skills, to expanding your academic vocabulary, to informal speaking. So there's a lot of different topics there, and those will be posted at the end of the summer, the topics per term, and which dates and where and when. And those are free and drop-in. You can come to one or you can come to all 20. We also offer a series of short courses in advanced English topics. These are short courses, they're 12 hours. They're usually in the evenings or afternoons, so you can come to them in and around your other courses or research. And they're offered every term, including the summer. We're offering them in July. We're also offering some of them in an intensive format at the end of August. And there are 5 different topics. So we have academic writing, academic speaking. We have one called English, Logic, Structure, and Rules, which is an advanced grammar class. One called Effective Oral Communication, and English Pronunciation and business communication as well. So those are courses. There is a small tuition fee associated with those, but they're a very intense way to work on advanced language skills. We offer a few credit courses. Course codes are ESL4 and ESL5. These are 6 hours a week. So over the course of the semester, it's approximately 72 hours of class, and they will appear on your transcript. They don't count towards degree requirements, but it is a good way to work on your spoken, written, academic English skills. If you're interested in either of those courses, I would recommend you send an email. There's also the Dalhousie Writing Center, which offers one-on-one tutorials for specifically around writing. They also offer group classes and workshops, all free on research, writing, and academic integrity, and have other writing events, graduate student writing week, and other things. Now, I should also mention, of course, your supervisor and your department are also great resources for language academic literacy, and especially writing in your discipline. And your specific supervisor may be able to point you towards disciplinary resources. So, for example, a guide to writing in economics, or guides to writing in the biological sciences, for example. And there are different online resources, books, handbooks to help you become initiated into writing in English in your discipline. Okay, so that has been a bit of an overview of fulfilling conditional acceptance, fulfilling the language condition for conditional acceptance at Dalhousie as a graduate student via standardized exam, the Dal English test, or the EAP program, and also some food for thought for you to think about in terms of taking care of the language and academic literacy development that will be important for you for academic success here at Dal. Let's take a look at our...
Would you like questions?
Yes, let's take a look at our questions. Okay, so we have a question: how much does it cost to take part in EAP? Okay, so the EAP program has 4 levels. Okay, now not everyone has to take all 4 levels of this program. It depends on the level of each person when they arrive. So, for example, if you already have, let's say, an IELTS score of 6.0 or 6.5 overall, you would just have to do a 3-month course. So that's a 3-month or 12-week course that's full-time. And you would just do the final level, and then you'd be able to proceed on to your master's or PhD program. So each 12-week course has a cost of 4,500 Canadian dollars. So that is a course that covers all of the academic expenses, so the tuition, materials, and all of the learning materials, access to the Dalhousie's learning management system, and access to all of Dalhousie's resources, libraries, etc.
If you don't mind, I'll just check to see if anyone has entered a question in chat.
Okay, so we are
that
just taking a look.
Q&A. I'm just going to try to pull up the chat under more.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's take a look under chat.
Here we go. And
okay, so
unfortunately, the third chat is not registering in a way that we can read it. So if anyone would like to enter any questions, either in Q&A and chat, we're very happy to answer them.
Exactly. We have a question in chat that is in a different script that is not in English. So if you want to re-enter your question in English, that would be wonderful.
Well, why don't we give everyone a moment to enter questions if they like? Jennifer, can you tell us about any recent graduate students you've had in the EAP too?
Yeah, so we have quite a few graduate students come through the English for Academic Purposes program. Let me see, from a variety of different countries, and going into different programs. So let me see, we've had recently, we have quite a few students have come through the EAP program going into the internetworking program. And that one is really great, so because they get to work on, many students that come into the internetworking program, their previous bachelor's degree, it may have been in engineering, or it may have been in computer science. And so they get to work on the language, the English language associated with both of those disciplines when they're in the EAP program. Now, I just see we have some questions here.
So one question, actually, if you don't mind, I might field.
Sure.
So this one is from a student who's not sure if they have an ESL requirement. So I'd say for you, I'm one of the admissions officers. My name is Jasmine Smarts. You can find me on the Faculty of Graduate Studies website. So please, if you're not sure if you have an ESL requirement or not, send me an email or send the graduate secretary for the department you are admitted to an email, and we can just check your record and see whether or not you have an ESL requirement.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, and would it be safe to say if there's a language requirement on your admission, it'll
be on your admission letter.
It will say very clearly on the letter. So definitely check with Jasmine and the Faculty of Graduate Studies if you're not sure. But if your letter doesn't say anything about a language condition, you probably don't have one. Is that
Absolutely.
safe to say?
Yeah, we always tell you if we want you to do ASL. So you
Exactly.
have one more question.
Oh, I have one over here as well.
Oh, perfect.
So in the question and answer box, it says, if I have already scored 7.0 overall in IELTS, so does that mean I do not have to appear for ESL programs? So if you've scored 7.0 overall in IELTS, and that is the minimum required score for your particular program, then you don't. So that means you have fulfilled that language requirement. However, if your graduate program requires a 7.5 IELTS or higher, then if you only have a 7.0 overall, then you would have to meet that language requirement in some way. So either an exam or a course.
Perfect. So you have a question over here asking if the course, I'm thinking they mean EAP level 2, is mandatory or optional. So
so talking about all courses, all English courses are optional. So if we're talking about the English for Academic Purposes program, it's optional. It's just one of the ways that you can satisfy the language condition on your admission if you have one. So it's not mandatory. It's one of the ways. You can also present one of the exams or the Dalhousie English test. So you're right, it's not a mandatory course.
Perfect. Well, it looks like that might be all of the questions. Oh, never mind. I see one popping up. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. That is very nice.
Yeah. So once again, if you're not sure if you have a language requirement or not, if it's not specifically mentioned on your acceptance letter, your admission letter, you probably don't. If you think you do and you just want to double check, Jasmine Smart can answer that question for you. And I'm going to...
do you want to advance the slide?
Yeah. Okay, so Let's
And I can
close
move that.
So I've put here an email address, esl@dal.ca, and you can write to this email address in a variety of languages, or English, obviously. If you have questions about the English language courses, if you want to explore the option of doing the Dalhousie English test instead of an IELTS or TOEFL, or about if you'd like some advice about your ongoing language and academic literacy development once you have come to Dal and once you've gained admission here. And should we give your email address as well, Jasmine?
I'm sure, let's do that. So my email address you can find on the Graduate Studies website, or it's jasmine.smart@dal.ca.
Okay, so and that's Jasmine is your resource for questions about admission and your admission conditions. So thank you, everyone.
Jennifer, thank you so much for presenting. This was so much good information. And everyone, thank you for taking the time to attend this morning. We'll be posting the recording on the orientation page where you first found this. And I hope that you'll join us for next month's pre-arrival webinar on how to apply for your student visa. Have a great day, and so see you at orientation.